Good evening and welcome to the regular meeting for council, and we are starting at 7:01 p.m. Councillor Sobel, you have your hand signal up.
I do, Your Worship. Thank you. Your Worship, at a recent council meeting, council moved in a public portion of meeting that the Council Code of Conduct Complaint Review and Recommendations Report supplied by Strategic Steps Inc. be accepted and be released publicly once the necessary redactions pursuant to the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act were completed by administration, and that the redacted report be brought back to council for further review prior to release to the public. Council had an opportunity to review those redactions in camera a short time ago, and at this point, I am prepared to make a motion in regards to that report. There was a second motion also made in public at a previous meeting that stated Councillor Peterson should issue a public apology in regards to the results of the Strategic Steps Inc. Code of Conduct investigation. So with those two previous resolutions in mind, I would move that council release the redacted report of Strategic Steps Inc. to the public on the investigation of the council complaint against Councillor Peterson, and that this matter be considered closed once Councillor Peterson complies with council's direction regarding a public apology. Thank you.
What is your point of order?
I'd like to know which item on the agenda Councillor Sobel is referring to, please.
I think it's an issue coming from the in-camera portion of the agenda. Mr. Legore?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. Under the in-camera agenda, we had 3 items, and council now is in order to deal with those 3 items coming out of in-camera if they wish to take directions. And this would be the first one of those items that we dealt with in camera. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
If it helps Councillor Bauer, I think he's addressing item 3.1 of the agenda.
And we would do that before the confirmation of an agenda, Your Worship?
I believe we can. I believe we can. We did confirm the agenda, did we not? Yeah, Councillor Corbeil? Maybe you.
Yeah, I was just gonna say. Yeah. Councillor Bauer was just a little bit late. We started at 6 and we did confirm the agenda.
Right, we did confirm. Thank you. Sorry, I forgot. We had a long in camera, but yeah, we did do that. Sorry about that. So we have a motion on the floor. Is there discussion on the motion? Councillor Sobel, is your hand still up, or are you?
No, sorry.
Councillor Montgomery, are you?
Yeah, sorry. What was the motion again? I didn't like. I heard there was like some discussion about what happened a couple weeks ago or last week, but I didn't hear the motion itself. Just let it be closed after this.
The motion I read was move that council release the redacted report of Strategic Steps Inc. to the public on the investigation.
Yeah. Okay, and that's it.
No,
can I finish?
More. You just need to let.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, continue.
On the investigation of the council complaint against Councillor Peterson, and that this matter be considered closed once Councillor Peterson complies with council's direction regarding a public apology.
That is the motion on the floor. Any discussion on that motion?
I guess for clarification, what does that mean when you say it'll be closed after this?
My sense is the.
Well, I'm asking Councillor Sobel what his intention there was, just for clarity.
Okay.
I'm not sure how much further assistance I can give you with this. Closed, finished, kaput, done with, finished, closed.
Follow-up question, Councillor Montgomery?
I just wanted, like, does that mean it can't be referred to or spoken of ever again? Like, what does that mean?
I would, again, I don't want to answer for Councillor Sobel, but my sense is that accepting the redacted report by the third-party by the third-party company, Strategic Steps, Inc., would conclude the investigation. We would release the redacted report to the public so the public can see what was paid for and what the findings were of this Code of Conduct complaint review, and then their recommendations.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I totally agree with releasing the report, as you know, and I totally agree. I remember the motion about Councillor Peterson apologizing. So I don't think that needs to be restated. But you know, I'm still learning here, so I'll defer to Councillor Sobel's experience here.
Okay, thank you. Are there
Your Worship, the only thing I would add is that one of the and I'm going into the report here, which has not been approved for public, but it was clear from comments from the investigator that his suggestion and hope is that this puts this matter to an end, and that was the purpose of closing this event and investigation completely once the sanctions were complied with, that the sanctions that council suggested were complied with. So that's the idea of having this closed, this matter closed. It hopefully is not going to be discussed again. It's not something I'm proud of to be part of in this regard, and I'm hoping that council will just put this behind them and let's move on. Thank you.
Councillor
Thank you for the
Bauer?
clarification.
Pardon me?
Oh, I was just saying thank you for the clarification.
Oh, okay, thank you. Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just have a question for Councillor Sobel, and that is that Strategic Steps made a number of recommendations in their report to council, which I believe I made a motion 2 weeks ago, where we would revisit a lot of our bylaws and policies in order to make our policies and bylaws stronger with regards to council conduct. And I'm wondering, if he says that this matter is closed, how are we to revisit those recommendations by Strategic Steps? So that's the only part of the motion that I have difficulty with. I would just like to take out that part so that we could go further and implement the suggestions and recommendations by this firm that we paid over $13,000 worth to get good value for our money.
I think Mr. Legore has his hand up and might be able to help.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the motion that is on the table will close the investigation. The motion that was made 2 weeks ago or a week ago to deal with the recommendations coming out of that investigation still stands, and administration will respond to those. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Does that help, Councillor Bauer, that your motion is still coming forward from administration regarding the different things that we can look at to...
Yeah, as long as Councillor Sobel just says close the investigation part, as our CAO just stated, so that it's closing, including the recommendations from the company.
So are you asking for a friendly amendment?
Yes, please. Councillor Sobel, would you accept a friendly amendment to add close the investigation part?
The word investigation is in the motion, so it's the redacted report to the public on the investigation of the council complaint against Councillor Peterson, and that this matter, that is the investigation, be considered closed once Councillor Peterson complies with council's direction regarding a public apology. So it's in there.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. There's no friendly amendment required. This is referring to the investigation. The investigation's closed. The recommendations still need to be addressed with, as stated in a previous motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Worship.
Thank you. Any further comments on the motion on the floor? Seeing none, then I'll call the motion. All in favor? And the motion is carried. And I believe we have two other items coming from in camera. Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Unless there's any comments from council, just in an effort to bring this matter to a close, I would ask your permission to allow me to proceed with my apology according to council's direction.
Since it ties directly in with the motion coming from our in-camera discussion, and it is part of the motion as far as asking you to comply with that, I will allow you to speak.
I see Councillor Sobel's hand is up, Your Worship.
Councillor Sobel?
Your Worship, Councillor Peterson has invited a comment or question, and I do have a comment to make on this. I didn't know that I would have the opportunity to read this, but it seems a fitting part is just some comments in regards to the report, which is now public, and I would appreciate the opportunity to read this. So I'm pleased that council has agreed to release the document. The redactions were minor and required under the Freedom of Information regulations.
Councillor Sobel?
I believe the action. I'm sorry.
Can I, just as a point of order, can I ask what in general your statement would be about?
Yes, this is in regards to the Councillor Peterson's requirement to put forward an apology, and how it relates to the investigation.
I just want
Perhaps I could wait until council statement time.
If you could just let me just make a comment. Councillor Sobel, I was going to ask you that, but I was also going to just remind you to ensure that it's a positive, it's a support of a council decision. There's a concern, obviously, that we want to support the decisions of council. So I just want to ensure that we're not going down that road. And could this come up in the reports from, or sorry, the questions or comments from councillors?
Actually, it can't, Your Worship, and I don't mind not reading this, but I think there's a question as to why an apology, and simply an apology, was ruled as satisfactory in this, and that's what my comments make reference to. But the reason I wouldn't be able to do it after is once Councillor Peterson submits her public apology, this matter is closed in regards to the investigation, and I would not violate that rule, Your Worship.
I just want to ensure that we're going to be in a positive move forward. We've tried to do things to address the situations out of the public eye, and I know the public is expecting us to carry on our business and carry ourselves with integrity and a support of council decisions. So I'm concerned that we're getting into the weeds, and I don't want anything to stimulate or cause controversy or any kind of a debate or emotion-filled discussion. That's my concern. So I'm very hesitant.
I'll withdraw my request to speak on this, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Sobel.
May I, Worship?
Councillor Peterson, I did acknowledge that you could make your address.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. So our council has unanimously agreed that I should offer an apology to this council for contravening sections 5.2, 8.2, and 9.1 of our Code of Conduct bylaw, and I'm grateful to be given the opportunity to do so. I will first address the breaches noted in sections 5.2 and 9.1. These breaches did not constitute part of Councillor Montgomery's allegations, but were nevertheless fairly presented as breaches in the course of this investigation by Strategic Steps. I therefore apologize for breaching section 5.
Councillor Peterson, we have lost your comments? We have lost your signal. Does anyone in our, do you know if she's trying to get back into the meeting, Bryce? Okay. Councillor Peterson, you may need to go through the steps of getting back into the Zoom meeting. We seem to have lost you. Okay. You may need to start again if you wouldn't mind, Councillor Peterson.
Your Worship, sorry, Your Worship, may I begin again?
Yes, I think that would be good for the public at home too.
Sorry, I apologize for that. I'm not sure why I had interference coming in with phone calls that weren't turned off. So I will first address the breaches noted in sections 5.2 and 9.1. These breaches did not constitute part of Councillor Montgomery's allegations, but were nevertheless fairly presented as breaches in the course of the investigation. I therefore apologize for breaching section 5.2 when I gave a statement to the media. The mayor is the only official spokesperson of council, and when I gave a statement to the media, I breached 5.2 of the code, and I apologize to both Mayor Fuel and to council for this breach. Section 9.1 deals with matters of in camera. In the course of the investigation, I did inform the investigators that I had taken my personal notes from an in-camera meeting of council. While I did not disclose the content of these notes to anyone, excepting the investigators, removing the notes from the meeting constituted a breach, for which I apologize. Regarding the allegations set out by Councillor Montgomery, the investigation concluded inappropriate language and tone was used within the context of a council meeting. I acknowledge that I breached 8.2 of the Code of Conduct when I used inappropriate language and tone of voice, and I apologize for this. Your Worship, no apology is complete without an acknowledgement of a plan to preclude further breaches of our Code of Conduct. The investigation carried out by Strategic Steps not only laid out my wrongdoing, but it also illustrated a host of other contraventions and wrongdoings. Providentially, the investigation laid out a path forward, not just for this council, but for future councils as well. And it is my intention to cooperate fully to ensure that we implement the recommendations provided and so that we are able to move forward. I really appreciate this opportunity, Your Worship. I thank you, and I hope that we can all move forward together.
Thank you. Councillor Sobel, is your hand up, or is that from last time? Thank you. And then I guess the next item, 3.2, arising from the in-camera portion of our regular meeting, is the statutory declaration or the council covenant. Councillor Bauer and then Councillor Corbeil.
Your Worship, just before we move on, there's a matter that has not been addressed by Councillor Peterson, and that was because it was not included in the report from Strategic Steps. When Councillor Peterson met with Strathmore Now, the radio station, she made an allegation that Councillor Montgomery was a misogynist, and I would like her to apologize publicly.
Your Worship,
Point of order, Councillor Bauer. There's a point of order being raised. She has issued quite a long apology, and I believe it meets the standards set out by Strategic Steps.
It certainly.
So I think I don't think we can get into demanding further apologies or anything else. I just think we have to go with. Didn't
happen as a result of the investigation. This is further to the investigation, so I could bring it up during council statements if you'd prefer.
I guess if you feel that you want to bring that up in council statements later, as long as it doesn't get into questioning or discussing the investigation report that we've accepted.
This is further to the investigation, Your Worship.
Okay, I guess.
Your Worship, I have a question.
Councillor Peterson, you have a question?
I just have a question for administration. This would not seem to be in the spirit that was outlined by Strategic Steps, Your Worship. If there's another conduct complaint to come forward, then I guess that's what Councillor Bauer is talking about. but otherwise it would seem to breach the report that we just read, and it would seem to put aside everything that we've just dealt with.
Well, I believe that your apology fulfilled what the strategic steps incorporated outlined as far as what they saw you should do.
I would defer to administration, Your Worship, on this, but to me, it seems like a definitive point of order. Strategic Steps was very aware of the article. If they'd have wanted to include it, they would have. So it seems to me that this is very much speaking to them, talking about people taking vengeance, as they do in the first part of this report. They warned council about this, and this to me would seem that that is what is happening here. So I would defer to administration as to consideration on that. Thank you.
Mr. Legore, would you be able to clarify?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the apology from Councillor Peterson is Councillor Peterson's apology, and she has the right to draft that. Council does not have the right to edit. They may not agree with her apology. That's their privilege, but it's her apology, and she's made it, and I recommend that Council move on and put this issue behind you.
Councillor Bauer, are you satisfied with that? I guess we have the recommendations that have come from strategic steps. They've outlined what they felt needed to be done by this councillor. The councillor has apologized. I think you're on mute still.
Yes, Your Worship. I'm very thankful that Councillor Peterson has taken this opportunity to publicly apologize. My only concern was that strategic steps was not given the directive to investigate anything that was not part of Councillor Montgomery's motion. And Councillor Montgomery made these allegations prior to Councillor Peterson going on record.
I think,
Point of order, Your Worship. Point of order.
Okay, Councillor Peterson.
There's a point of order here, Your Worship.
Yep.
They did find me on breaches that were not included in the allegations. This is not okay to continue in this mode. It goes against the entire purpose of this investigation. And I am feeling very, very persecuted by Councillor Bauer on an issue that is closed.
If I can just say something, and I will rule on this, I will not be allowing Councillor Bauer to speak on this. We have an investigative report that we accepted as a report, and we've already voted on releasing it to the public with redactions. To then go back and say that they didn't consider something else is going away from the spirit of the investigative report, and it would mean that we're, in essence, by saying they've missed something or that something came up after, that would go against our past motion to accept the report and release it to the public. It would mean that we're questioning it, and it would show that we're not accepting the report. So I'm going to, I'm not going to allow you to speak on that at this time. Councillor Corbeil and then Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was hoping to move on to the next motion. May I?
Unless Councillor Montgomery has a question that he'd like to ask. But if it's concerning the investigation and questioning any part of it or questioning that something was missed, it again would go against us accepting the report as a council and agreeing to release it to the public.
Well, two things, I guess. One is, I think procedurally, we can discuss the report all we want, and we can question the report all we want. We can accept the report, but we can still question it and question its findings, question the way it was come to, etc. I was actually going to make a motion regarding the acceptance of Councillor Peterson's apology, because I think that in order for it to be, to pass muster, let's say, it should actually be voted on. And with that, I'm prepared with a motion.
If you could
Point of order, Your Worship.
That's what I was going to say. Again, there's You know, I'm put in this situation where I have to rule on things that obviously can be very awkward. And one of the things is if we question the report, then does that mean we're supporting the motion and the vote of council to accept it? By speaking against the report or criticizing it, are we then supporting the vote of council that has just been passed to accept that report and share it with the public? Second thing is, I do not know if there was anything in the report that said council had to make a motion and vote on accepting the apology. There's nothing in there that said we have to judge the apology and we have to vote whether or not to accept it. The report outlined the breaches and how serious or how not serious they were. It had some recommendations. One of its recommendations was an apology. Councillor Peterson did make that apology. It was a long apology in public. It's on public record. It's on YouTube. It's shared with the public. I believe she fulfilled the investigation and the report. So for us to vote on whether we accept the apology is not in the report. There's nothing in there that says council needs to vote on the apology. So
if I could respond to that.
Sure.
Is that okay? Thank you. So I was going to make a motion that we accept it, and what I was going to say is that I thank council's time for this investigation, and I'm grateful for the time and the resources that were put into it. I hope that it will. Let's say, correct any problematic behavior that was going on. And for me, I would like to move forward. I don't think any more time should be spent on this issue. I think that, I think that council has more important business and better things to focus resources on. I'm not interested in dragging this out any further. And in fact, my motion was going to be, like I said, to accept Councillor Peterson's apology, and I thank Councillor Peterson for apologizing for what went on. And with that, that's all I wanted to say. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you accepting her apology, and we'll move on to Councillor Corbeil to talk about the covenant, the council covenant. It's a matter arising from in-camera. Councillor Sobel, did you have a question?
I'm sorry, I do, Your Worship, and it's actually a question for probably administration. The report that we've been talking about has now been released publicly, and I just want to know how the public can gain access to that report.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we will make the redacted available online through our
Thank
website.
You.
Thank you. Councillor Sobel. Councillor Corbeil?
Thank you, Your Worship, and this is kind of a timely motion. You know, we have had our ups and downs, and I'll speak to the motion after. I'm going to move that the covenant as presented be adopted by council and executed by all members of council as of this date. You know, may I speak to the motion?
Yes, you can.
Thank you. This is the day that I have definitely looked forward to. We have had our challenges, and I know it's easier said than done, but this is a step in the right direction, and we need to start somewhere. I want to thank CAO Lagore for bringing this covenant to us as presented today. You know, I really do hope, so as it does to me, I take this lightly. You know, I feel bad that it's come to this point, but as of today, and I hope this moment or whatever, that we really can, as it is in Frozen, let it go, and you know, and finish off holding our heads high. And you know, I thank you everybody, and I hope that it's passed. Thank you.
Councillor Corbeil, were you prepared to? Are you thinking of making a motion, or did you just want to make a general comment there?
No, I made the motion before I spoke to it. Okay. I move that the council that the covenant is presented to be adopted by council and executed by all members of council as of this date.
Okay, thank you. If you made that motion, I obviously it's in my head and out. I apologize. We have a motion on the floor. Is there discussion on the motion? Councillor Montgomery and then Councillor Peterson.
I just wanted to thank Councillor Corbeil for bringing this forward. It's a very, it's a good idea. There's a number of points in there that will, let's say, hopefully prevent, future issues and possibly even maybe help future councils to, get off on the right foot and to ensure that, things stay on the right path. So thank you very much for bringing this forward.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. I see no other hands. Councillor Corbeil, you did not want to speak again, did you? Councillor Peterson? No? You're okay? Okay. So we have a motion on the floor. Is there any further discussion on the motion before I call the vote? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? And the motion is carried. Councillor Peterson.
Your Worship, I would move that council, based on the legal advice received, receive the complaint regarding Councillor Sobel's Facebook post as information and that no further action be taken.
Thank you for your motion. Is there discussion on this motion that has just been put forward to us? Councillor Montgomery?
Just for context, I guess. So council received a complaint regarding a Facebook post that was made several weeks ago. And so we received a complaint from a member of the public regarding this. And I guess I want people in the public to know that council does take these issues very seriously. And that, this whole issue was discussed and kind of examined from a number of different perspectives. And so I just want people to know that when you do have an issue with the way the town is operating or when with the way the council is operating, that these issues are taken seriously. And if there's any issues in the future, I would encourage people to contact council. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion or comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion? And the motion is carried. And that concludes the in-camera items that were on the public agenda. That brings us to, we have no presentations or recognitions. We have no delegations tonight in item 5, and we have no item of consent agenda in item 6. That brings us to item 7, confirmation of minutes. 7.1, the adoption of the May 5th, 2021 regular council meeting minutes. Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just have a question before we move to accept these minutes. Under number 9.1, that item was carried for the Lakewood. I'm just grabbing it now. Oh goodness, here it goes.
The one for funding of Brave Park.
Yes, I would like to ask, please, that administration include that Councillor Cox and myself voted against that motion.
Okay, I think Deborah has received your directions concerning 9.1 and she's making a note of it. Thank you. Councillor.
And then I move the motion for the minutes to be that council adopt the May 5th, 2021 regular council minute meeting. Pardon me, I'm having trouble. That council adopt the May 5th, 2021 regular council meeting minutes as presented.
Thank you. Councillor Sobel, did you have a question on the minutes before?
Just a point that I wanted to clear up, Your Worship. At that meeting where these minutes come from, I erroneously named someone as the vice chair of the new vice chair of the Chamber of Commerce, and this was under committee reports, page 7 of this document. And I discovered my error soon after the meeting ended and notified administration. So the correction has already been made in the minutes. The new director, the new vice chair for the chamber was actually Director Scott Silva, and the correction was made. So no amendment is required, Your Worship. But I just wanted to clarify that that was not my original statement in my committee report, but it has been rectified now. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a motion on the floor from Councillor Bauer to accept and adopt those minutes, those meeting minutes. I'll call the question. All in favor? And the motion is carried. And that brings us to item 8. There are no tabled items tonight. We go to item 9, items and/or reports from administration. 9.1, 2021 Seniors Week Proclamation, which is on page 10 of your handout. And Catherine Walsh, welcome. And you know how to run the podium, so if you would like to raise it or lower it, or if you have a trap door, I think there's a secret button if you want to, dump out Ethan or anyone like that in the crowd.
Thank you. Good evening, Your Worship and Council. We are very happy to support and celebrate Seniors Week from June 7th to the 13th. Albertans are encouraged to show appreciation for seniors and recognize the important contributions seniors make to our province. We are currently working on plans for Seniors Week, but so far we have confirmed a couple of things, so I'd like to share those with you. One is jukebox requests, and that's in partnership with More Country. So there will be able to, the community will be able to phone in or text song requests, and the radio station will play those requests from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. in the morning throughout the week. And then, of course, back by popular demand is our Shred It program, and that will be June 9th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., and the location will be at the Strathmore Library parking lot. We hope to have advertising out by the beginning of next week, which will include hopefully all organizations and what they're doing on one poster to deliver to the community. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think I might have qualified as a senior, but if I call there, can you request like Satisfaction, or does it have to be country music?
I guess that will be up to More Country.
Okay. All right.
Thank
thanks.
you.
Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. You know what I heard? The first request is that you're going to do your Elvis routine. I'm pretty sure that was the first request.
I don't want to drive away residents.
Your Worship, I would move that Council proclaim June 3rd to 7th, 2021 as Seniors Week in Alberta. And if I might speak to the motion, Your Worship.
Okay.
A great proportion of our community are seniors, and they contribute tremendously to our community. And so recognizing them with a week like this is really important. I also want to recognize the work that's done on behalf of everyone in community, but very much so in the realm of seniors services through our family community support services under the direction of Catherine Walsh and her team. I hear from seniors during this COVID period, particularly their gratitude, their deep gratitude for the work being done by Strathmore Community Support Services. I am very grateful to them. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Any other comments on the motion that's been put forward? Or seeing none, then I'll call the motion. All in favor of the motion on the floor? And the motion is carried. That brings us tonight. Thank you, Catherine, for your presentation and for being here tonight. 9.2, Municipal Reserve Disposition of Part of Block 8, Municipal Reserve Plan 9411772. And Chuck Proctor, welcome. We're glad to have you tonight.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of Council. Just a very brief presentation tonight. I'm here to request a motion of a public hearing. There's a number of fragmented parcels in Kinsman Park, and last year 2 subdivision applications were submitted and conditionally approved. One of the things that's occurring in Kinsman Park right now is there's a long, narrow strip of a parcel, and it's currently designated Municipal Reserve which is a provincial designation. In order for these subdivisions to pass and for us to consolidate these two parcels, one being the fire hall to accommodate the cabanas and the other being this parcel here to accommodate the Strathmore municipal building, we need to consolidate and clean up these titles. In order to do that, we need to remove this municipal reserve designation. And we're here asking tonight for a public hearing, to set a date for a public hearing for the disposal of 0.378 hectares of MR from Parcel Block 8 MR, Plan 9411772 on June 16th, 2021. Thanks, Council. I'm happy to answer any questions or...
Thank you, Chuck, for your presentation. And do we have questions from councillors for Chuck regarding this? Councillor Peterson? Councillor Peterson, no. Councillor Montgomery?
Yeah, sorry, I just have a question for Chuck. First of all, Chuck, thanks a lot. I guess like for people like me, let's say, could you just maybe like just expand on how this affects, like, let's say, the ability to do things? Because when people look at the maps, for instance, it might not make total sense why we need to make these changes.
It's a good question, Councillor Montgomery. Thanks so much for the question. Right now, I guess one of the things that's affecting us right now is we've got a municipal building that might be crossing a property line. Ideally, a building or a use of land is all consolidated onto one property line. We don't. There's not really a big danger in this. It's definitely a nice to have, but it's also it was a requirement of the subdivision condition to consolidate these parcels to clean things up in Kinsman Park and start making things make a little bit more sense on the planning side. This helps us in future decisions. It helps us move forward. It helps us kind of, just solidify the future of Kinsman Park a little bit and clean some of this stuff up. That's been a remnant since the 90s when it was previously kind of subdivided and surveyed by the CPR. We're just starting to clean some of this stuff up and get organized down here. So it really kind of helps the planning process to do this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And I have a motion ready if nobody else wants to say anything.
I think Councillor Bauer has one question, and then we can go to you for your motion.
Thank you, Your Worship. My question to Mr. Proctor, and thank you very much for your report, Chuck, is just that I'm wondering if any of these changes are affecting the donation of land for the seniors center.
Thanks, Councillor Bauer. A good question. So this doesn't affect the Seniors Lodge donation at all. The map in front of you, I don't know if you could see, there's two kind of red boxes there. Those are the places that we're proposing to remove the MR designation. The town is still remaining ownership of the land. We're not changing any ownership. We're just changing the provincial, or proposing to change the provincial designation of MR, subject to a public hearing, which will be advertised and held and talked about in detail in June if council wishes to set that date for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. I think Councillor Montgomery, you have a motion ready?
I do, yes. I'll move the council schedule a public hearing for the disposal of 0.378 hectares of municipal reserve from Parcel Block 8 MR, Plan 9411772 on June 16th, 2021.
Thank you for the motion. Now we have a motion on the floor. Is there further discussion on that besides the questions you've asked? Seeing no discussion, hands up. I'll call the question. All in favor? And the motion is carried. Thank you, Chuck, for your presentation. That brings us to 9.3, policy number 1809, budget. And Mr. Teedy is going to be speaking to this and presenting. And good evening, Mel, and welcome.
There were two requested amendments at that time and are included in the policy as presented. For items not included in budget being considered as an amendment to a budget by council, that administration include in the analysis an opportunity interest cost at the current interest rate as a cost to the project. The second was amendments to the capital budget that alters the scope of a project or that materially changes the appearance or functionality of a project shall be reviewed by and authorized by council. In addition to this, administration would like to amend the report and policy to include the following. Council to consider the wording under citizen engagement, transparency, and accountability, the following point. That council be provided with a quarterly financial update, including a draft statement of financial position, statement of operations, and a report on capital projects complete with variances. This would amend the recommendation to read that council adopt policy 1809 as revised.
Thank you for your presentation and your report, as well as your comments. Are there any questions or comments for Mr. Teedy before anyone puts a motion on the floor? Councillor Montgomery?
Thank you. And I can make a motion, I guess, and then people can speak to it, or I can speak to it. I will move the council adopt policy number 1809 as revised, as per Mr. Teedy. And I just wanted to thank administration for their work on this, and I want to thank council as well for approving or asking for these changes. And I think that they will help this council and future councils to just have a better idea of what's going on. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. Any more discussion, comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question or call the motion. All in favor? And the motion is carried. Thank you, Mr. Teedy. We go on to 9.4 draft financial report to March 31st, 2021, page 22. Lisa Gregory is joining us for this. Welcome, Lisa.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. This is the financial report for the first quarter of 2021. We'll start off with the financial assets section. The total of cash, temporary investments, and investments at March 31st, 2021 totaled $12.5 million. Our cash balance, not including investments, at May 18th is $4 million. Taxes and grants in place of taxes receivable is significantly higher than December 2020. At March 31st, 2021, taxes receivable was $2.7 million compared to $600,000 at December 31st, 2020. This is due to timing. Taxes are not due until June 30th, 2021. Our TIPS collections for 2021 are consistent compared to the same period in 2020, which is a very good sign. The trade and other accounts receivable of $2.3 million is up $175,000 from the balance of $2.1 million at December 31st, 2020. This is mostly due to our MSI receivable. Investments are down $6.3 million from December 31st, 2020. Investments have decreased to pay for both operating and capital expenditures during quarter one. Total financial assets of $17.4 million at March 31st, 2021, compared to $19.8 million at December 31st, 2020. So if there are no questions, we'll move on to the liability section. The total liabilities are $27.8 million compared to $31.6 million at December 31st, 2020. The accounts payable in total have decreased by $3 million from $4.4 million at December 31st to $1.4 million at March 31st. This in part is due to the 2020 capital projects, to paying off them. This was a $1.5 million decrease of this balance. Deferred revenue decreased by $338,000. This is due to grants being brought into income. I just wanted to mention the most grant. We brought in $183,000 this quarter into income. The long-term debt decreased from 24.4 million at December 31st to 23.9 million, representing payments made on the debt during the first quarter. The 2021 borrowing for capital of 1.2 million isn't expected to close until the first week of June. So you'll see this amount in our Q2 financial statements. The net financial assets, that is the total of financial assets, less the total of the liabilities, improved by 1.4 million compared to December 31st, 2020. Prepaids increased 263,000, mainly due to insurance. This amount will be expensed throughout the year. If there's not any questions, we'll move on to the consolidated statement of operations. The operating revenue of 7.7 million is 24% of the total budgeted revenue of the year. User fees and sales of goods is down slightly when compared to the previous years. Franchise fees and utility charges almost offset the decrease in rental and sales of goods and services from the closure of our rec facilities and cultural facilities, so the Civic Center. Government transfers for operating include 183,000 of the most grant. We have now brought 100% of the 1.4 million most grant into income. No more is expected. 175,000 of MSI has also been recorded to cover the Town Hall and the Strathmore Commons principal loan payments. Penalties on taxes is down compared to March 31st, 2020, due to the penalty rate falling to 4% from 9% due to COVID relief on 2020 taxes. April penalties are back up to the 9% as the COVID relief has been discontinued according to the tax bylaw. Licenses and permits is up 98,000 compared to the previous year. This is mainly due to the increase of business taxes of 65,000. During 2020, business licenses for in-town businesses were waived. We'll move on to expenses. The total expenses to March 31st are 7.5 million, or 22% of budget. Expenses are down 820,000 compared to March 31st, 2020. This is due to a decrease in spending due to temporary layoffs with the closure of our recreation facilities. Turnover has also contributed to a reduction in salaries and wages in various departments. If there's no more questions, we'll move over to this segmented reporting. So this schedule shows our revenue and expenses by operational area. Does anyone have any questions on this schedule?
Are there any questions from councillors so far?
No? Okay.
Councillor Bauer? Sorry, Lisa.
Okay.
Thank you, Your Worship. Lisa, or Mrs. Gregory, I just have a question about the grants. Mm-hmm. First of all, do we have a person that is currently dedicated to applying to grants? Like someone dedicated within our organization that specifically looks for grants? Or were these grants, how were they obtained?
So I believe so. And it's split between various departments, is my understanding. So finance is assigned the MSI grants, federal gas tax, MOST, and MSP grants. And I know Ethan takes care of a lot of the infrastructure grants. For the smaller grants, I believe it's marketing and communications. Is that correct?
Mr. Legore?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Also, depending upon the nature of the grant, it may involve different departments, and whichever department would be involved would prepare that. But it is a collective effort in the end. Other departments will review it. Lisa's role is really to make sure that we meet the terms of the grant and that we do the proper reporting and accounting for it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And in addition to that, so why are the grants positioned under financial assets instead of revenue?
So this is your taxes, and I believe this is referring to the grants in lieu of taxes. So this is, maybe Mel can talk a little bit more to that, There's not very much in there. This is just a receivable account. So it's not necessarily income. It's a very, very small amount of our taxes, probably about 30,000. Is that what you're getting at? Yeah, so this taxes and grants in place of taxes receivable is really our income, or not our income taxes, but our taxes from our residents. And so at Q1, we still have quite a large receivable because the taxes aren't due until June 30th. So it's not really in relation to the most grant or MSP or anything like that. So has nothing to do with that. Those types of receivables fall under your trade and other receivables.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
Trying to understand the relationship between those.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for clarifying.
Just a clarifying comment. Grants in place of taxes refers to specifically provincially owned properties where we receive a grant instead of the tax from the province.
So that would include school boards, senior centers, Legion. Am I right?
No, it only includes one or two properties, and the one property from the province is the courthouse, and the other property is from the federal government, and that's the RCMP building.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer.
Okay, moving on to the schedule of property taxes. This schedule is based on 25% of the budgeted taxation and reflects the actual requisitions and payments made during the first quarter of 2021. So we'll move on to the review of salaries, wages, and benefits. The total salaries and wages and benefits paid to March 31st, 2021 was $2.2 million and represents 18% of the total budget of $12.6 million. In addition to that, the town has paid $342,000 towards operating consultants. So the next schedule is the schedule of utilities reporting. The town's goal to achieve full costing of utilities is being met. We have a surplus of $176,000 at March 31st, 2021. The next statement that we'll move on to is the reserve continuity statement. This statement shows the reserves at March 31st, 2021. Total reserves increased from $9.4 million at December 31st, 2020 to $9.6 million during the first quarter. The next schedule is the schedule of accumulated surplus. It is important to make sure that the town's accumulated surplus, net of equity, is above zero. At March 31st, 2021, we have a surplus of $10.9 million. And the final schedule is the schedule of capital spending. The last schedule is a page that lists the spending on capital projects to the end of March 31st, 2021, along with the funding sources of each of the projects. At March 31st, 2021, we'd spent a total of $265,000. Most of our capital spend is scheduled to occur during Q2 and Q3. Does anyone have any questions? Any more questions?
No, I think we're good.
Good. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation and your answers as well. So, Councillor Corbeil?
I would move the council accept the information, the draft financial report to March.
I think we lost the last part, but I believe it's March 31st, 2021.
Yes.
Thank you. So we have a motion on the floor. All in favor? That motion is carried, which brings us to 9.5, realignment of reserves. Mr. Teedy is back. Mel?
Thank you, Your Worship. The purpose of the realignment of the reserves is to provide increased financial efficiency in using the financial resources of the town of Strathmore. Several of the reserve accounts have been combined. Also, the title of the accounts is more general to give a broader scope to the usability of the reserves. The combining of the accounts give a larger available balance in order to provide a more meaningful balance to accommodate the financial needs of various projects. Prior, the account balances in a number of cases were too small in order to accomplish substantive things in the way of projects. That concludes my comments, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you, Mel. Councillor Montgomery?
Thank you. So a couple of years ago or so, we spent a bunch of money on a recreation master plan. And at the time, we were informed that in order to collect offsite levies for recreation, we needed to have a recreation master plan. And I guess this question spills over into the new offsite levy bylaw that we're looking at. And I'm just wondering, and there's no on the schedule here. There's nothing about recreation. So I'm just wondering what administration's current position is on offsite levies for recreation, and if that's just something we'll be doing down the road, or am I kind of misinformed about why we did the recreation master plan? Thank you.
Mr. Simpson, Jim?
Yes, I'd take a stab at this. We, administration, would like to bring forward in the near future an offsite levy for recreation. We'd also like to eventually include protective services as well. So future fire halls, et cetera, would be, there would be an offsite levy charge for those. But we're trying to, as you know, and tonight we'll be discussing offsite levies further. We're wanting to clean these up and get these established, and then move forward to recreation and possibly protective services. Thank you.
And if I could just follow up, and I guess you're suggesting that we could just add those to the schedule at the time when those offset levies are created?
Yes, we could add those to the schedule when we're in a position and through an amendment to the offsite levy bylaw.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. And I can offer a motion if you'd like.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery.
Okay, I'll move the council approve the realignment and consolidation of reserves as listed in the draft Schedule A of this report.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor. Is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? And the motion is carried, which brings us to 9.6, waive transfer to tax fee 2021, and Mel is back.
Thank you, Your Worship. The report, I've tried to outline all the pertinent items pertaining to this report, and I would just ask if council has any questions on the report.
Thank you, Mel. Do we have any questions for Mel on this report? Councillor Montgomery?
Just a motion when you're ready.
Thank you. Is there any? Are there any questions for Mel before Councillor Montgomery puts a motion on the floor? Seeing none, Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you. So I will move the council authorize administration to waive the transfer to tax fee in the amount of $53.55 for the balance of 2021 on past due utility accounts. And if I could speak to this. So earlier this year, council was looking at the idea of waiving the late fees, which a lot of times, only work out to a few dollars. And so obviously this $53.55, and that was for people that are having trouble, making utility payments essentially due to, pandemic related issues. So I think that this is a good idea because this is kind of a bit, it's obviously a bigger amount than just kind of waiving the late fees. And so I wanted to thank administration for bringing this forward.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. Any other comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? And the motion is carried. Thank you, Mel. That brings us to 9.7, membership in the Calgary Metropolitan Region Board, page 39. Mr. Simpson, Jim?
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. I'm here tonight to present a motion that a letter be sent to the Minister of Municipal Affairs requesting that the town of Strathmore be removed as a member of the Calgary Metropolitan Region Board. As you know, Cmrb was formed in January of 2018 by the province of Alberta. Town of Strathmore has been a member since the inception. Strathmore has participated on committees and has been actively involved in the development of a growth plan and a servicing plan. I want to state up front that Mr. Legore and I are and have been very supportive of metropolitan regional boards, and in particular Edmonton Metro and Calgary Metro, if the fit is good. We do not feel that the fit is good for the town of Strathmore, and I will explain some of the reasons later in my presentation. First, I'd like to recognize the many hours and days that Mayor Fuel, Councillor Sobel, and Councillor Montgomery as an alternate has provided attending and participating on the board and various political committees. Also, I'd like to recognize staff members who have also spent many hours and days attending and participating on the administrative committees. Mr. Wilson is here. He represented us on transportation, water, wastewater, stormwater. Mr. Proctor, planning and development. Mr. Pretzlaff on recreation, and Mr. Person, communications. I will say, I can say at this time that all of us in these 4, 5, including myself and Mr. Gore, we all agree with the recommendation that we would like to withdraw. There are a number of reasons, but I will highlight what I consider maybe the more significant ones. First off, our population is, I know we never know for sure what the population actually is, but it's somewhere around 13,592 of Strathmore. That's less than 1% of the entire Calgary Metro Region Board population. Strathmore is located approximately 50 kilometers from Calgary, and because of that, there's little or no impact that Strathmore can make on the Calgary region. The Calgary Metro Board can make an impact on how Strathmore develops. Calgary Metro Regional Proposed Growth Plan promotes higher population densities, 8 dwelling units per acre versus 5 or 6 that we currently have in Strathmore. They're promoting master plan communities versus residential communities. What that means is the master plan communities will have residential, but it will also have to have commercial nodes within it. And a lot of our communities are just residential communities because, as an example, the entire town of Strathmore might be the equivalent of a master plan community in the city of Calgary. These are, you need a large population to support that commercial development. Strathmore should control their own destiny with the types of development that are demanded or needed in this community. Regional services, recreation, transit, are they, will they be mandatory down the road, mandatory participation? Regional services is a big discussion right now. And I suppose an example could be if there's some kind of a decision that, say, a new arena is a regional service and that all municipalities should participate and pay for its building of it or maintenance, then Strathmore could be drawn into that. The couple of more issues, one is they're dealing with Wheatland County. Currently, under the legislation for metro regional districts, if two municipalities are both members of a metro region area, there's no legislative direction or avenue to force the other municipality into cost sharing through mandatory, that's the word I'm looking for, well, the ICFs, yeah, intermunicipal. So there's no way of forcing municipalities to the table and having, mandatory resolution to cost sharing. However, as you know, the Minister of Municipal Affairs has made it very clear recently that he does have the power to, if two municipalities are not cooperating, not coming to some sort of an agreement on recreation cost sharing or other services, the minister says that he will step in and correct it. So there is that avenue. It's at the minister's discretion. If one or more of the municipalities are not part of the metro region, then there is legislated avenues within the MGA to force a municipality into mandatory cost sharing arrangements. I believe I can make mention that, to my knowledge, Wheatland County is wanting to withdraw from the Calgary Metro Region Board. Certainly, if they're successful in withdrawing, we'd become an island out here, not even with common boundaries with the Metro region. The last item I'll talk about very briefly is funding for the CMRB. To date, the province has paid all of the costs for the development of the growth plan and servicing plans. However, it is known that the province, certainly under the financial constraints that they are now, that eventually the municipalities, the member municipalities of the CMRB will be asked to fund the cost, operating costs for that board. Mr. Mayor, Council, that's about all I want to speak to. The report in your agenda has a bit more of the pros and cons if you want. These were the ones that I felt were maybe the more important ones, and I'd be happy to answer questions.
Thank you for that report and your discussion. Jim, I've got Councillor Bauer. Did you still want to speak? I had you first. Councillor Bauer, then Councillor Montgomery, Corbeil, and then Peterson.
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to say thank you so much to administration, to Mr. Simpson and Mr. Legore for their hard work on this. I really appreciate them breaking down the pros and cons for us, especially for myself, who has not been able to attend the meetings and who has just been watching from afar, listening to the reports, either from yourself, Your Worship, or Councillor Sobel or Councillor Montgomery. And I thank the three of you for all of your hard work. I also recognize that there is a financial implication on this, and that was not included as a pro. And Mr. Simpson just kind of spoke on that. But there is a significant amount that can be saved by us withdrawing from the Calgary Metropolitan Regional Board right now. And so I very much support this recommendation by administration. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. I'll go to Councillor Montgomery, then Corbeil, then Peterson.
Thank you. I just have a motion ready whenever you're ready for it.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Jim before we have a motion come forward? And then once the motion's on the floor, we can discuss everything related to CMRB. Are there questions first for Jim? Councillor Peterson?
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess my question would be if there is some wisdom and respect perhaps in just waiting for the report to be finalized, just so that we have all the information. I have questions relevant to the motion. The motion is, if we have a motion on the floor, then I have several questions. But we don't have, I defer to you and Councillor Sobel, and this report is due very soon, is it not?
Yeah, I believe it's June 1st. Is that correct, Councillor Sobel? And I believe, I believe Minister McIver has stated to Wheatland County, or has expressed his desire that, or his position that he wouldn't entertain any municipality from leaving the CMRB until he's received the plan. And I spoke with Reeve Link today, and she mentioned something about him also referencing the upcoming municipal elections in the fall. So perhaps, I don't want to speak for him, but perhaps he's thinking of what new council's directions might be too. I don't know, but I do know that June 1st is the date that the plan is supposed to be finalized and submitted to the minister.
So, Your Worship, I respect particularly you and Councillor Sobel and what you've brought to the table, and Mr. Simpson and Mr. Legore. We couldn't have two more informed people in our midst ever, and I completely respect their position. But I also think a lot about, when I read the CMRB reports, the endless reports, I always think about the longevity of our actions with regards to things outside general development. And I understand clearly what Mr. Simpson is saying with regards to the disadvantages to Strathmore regarding development. And I guess the reason I want to see the end of this report is that I really would like to examine opportunities for a mediated process that would recognize this great divergence in terms of development of places like us. And that maybe there is an opportunity to do that. So we don't have to throw out much of the good that I see in terms of the longevity of planning for future generations. How else are we ever going to introduce issues like intergenerational equity if we don't look at some kind of a regional management plan? And so I'm torn by this, because I see a much bigger role, but I also am not prepared to see the damage to our immediate community. And that's why I would like to wait, Your Worship. But I'd like to hear council weigh in on it too.
So is your question then to Mr. Simpson, can this be deferred?
Can this be postponed? Be postponed and have an opportunity to look at that final report and to see and discuss among this council if there is an opportunity for some kind of a median agreement and a different way forward. I understand what he says when he says it's not a good fit. Completely agree with him. But yeah, my question is related to, can we defer it till we see the end of the report, and can we have a discussion on that other piece going forward? I appreciate your time. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you. Jim, do you have an answer?
Yes, I do. Sure, council can defer making a decision on this to whenever you wish to make the decision. I do believe, though, that the growth plan and the other plan is in its final stages, and I do not see a lot of changes being made between now and June 1st. And I don't see, they made a presentation, the CMRB made a presentation last week to this council that I was privileged to sit in and listen to. And I didn't hear anything there that changed my mind and my position on whether Strathmore should be participating in the Calgary Metro Region Board. But simple answer is yes, you can delay this decision to whenever you feel fit. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Councillor Sobel, did you have a question for Jim?
I did, Your Worship. I do have a question for Mr. Simpson. Although I've been involved with the CMRB project from, I believe, the beginning, one thing that that puzzles me, and I'm hoping you might be able to shed some light on this, Jim, is do you have any idea why Strathmore and Wheatland were included in the CMRB in the first place?
You know, I probably can't give you an honest answer on that. I really don't know for sure. I think, you know, decisions are made. It's not always the right decision when they are made. I think that, you know, you look at Wheatland County, and if you look at the portion that's included, it's just a small portion actually, excuse me, of Wheatland County that's actually been chopped up and included into the metro region. I don't think when the decision was made there was a whole lot. My guess is there wasn't a whole lot of thought behind it. I don't think, I know the minister in the province made the decision, but obviously their administration had something to do with it. You know, the question is, did they really understand the Calgary region, and did they understand Strathmore and its involvement in the Calgary region? So I'm sorry, Councillor Sobel, I really probably can't answer that question.
That's fine, Jim. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Peterson, did you have another question, or you?
I do have a follow-up for Jim or for Doug, because I know they both have extensive experience in this. And it goes back to that opportunity. Councillor Sobel's question about why were we there to begin with, I see some reasoning, but to me there has to be some other way of negotiating a way forward. Like why lose everything? Like I understand that there is no fairness for development and no reason for us to be there on the basis of development and no benefit to our community within that. But on the other hand, there's some huge opportunity to put practices into municipal councils that convince or cajole decision makers to really think hard about the consequences for the future generations.
Councillor Peterson, did you have a question for?
Yeah, my question is there an opportunity to mediate this? Like, is there an in-between that we can do? Is there an opportunity for us to go to the Calgary Regional Management Board or the CMRB and to ask, like, is there some other level of agreement that we can come to? Why do we have to throw everything out? You know, they must recognize that we are not the same as them. I hear Jim when he says they can make an impact on us. We cannot make an impact on them. But they also have some things that could be very good for us. So is there an opportunity to mediate something into the future? So if we make the decision to just go out now, do we lose something by not being able to negotiate a different agreement? All
I can say is that the whole focus of the meetings and discussions have been solely about the plan and getting the plan done and addressing some of the concerns that the rural municipalities might have regarding things that are affecting the urban municipalities as well. Like last week, for example, we discussed the size of commercial developments in the rural area as to whether they should be 10 acres or 20 acres, and how far from a municipality should they be? Should they be allowed to be 2 kilometers, or should they be 5 kilometers away? And there was a great deal of concern expressed by both sides as to coming up with an agreement that could be reached. Now, that doesn't affect us because we're so far from a lot of these places. The other thing that Reeve Link mentioned today, and I don't think I'm speaking out of turn, it was just a question she had, and some of the discussion over the past few years have dealt with regional transit. And her concern, her question was, if we are in the CMRB, the County of Wheatland and Strathmore, will we be required as one of the members to pony up money for regional transit that might service the north-south line, Airdrie to Calgary? Are we going to be, expected to kick in money for those kinds of things? And then the administrative end of it, like Jim was saying, when the province is done funding the CAO, the chair, the administrative staff, the per diems for the various members who have to come to meetings. When the province has done that, the members of the CMRB will have to step up and assume their portion of that, or I don't know how they'll derive the amount to pay. But as far as the focus of the discussion and the questions, it's been mainly about the plan, as far as getting something that's palatable to all the municipalities or most of the municipalities, because you're not going to get all 10 members to agree on things. There's some definite hurdles and definite disagreements that are very difficult to hammer out resolutions to. So the short answer, I've rambled a bit, but the short answer is I haven't seen anything that would I haven't heard anyone suggest or find a way for us to find another solution or another aspect. Jim?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Peterson, and I agree with you. I don't see an avenue how we can negotiate something as being the outside source, or I don't see any avenues of negotiating. It's a large area, heavily populated, obviously with Calgary and some of the surrounding urban municipalities. Can I just go back to Councillor Sobel's question about, why would Strathmore be included in there? And I don't have that answer, but I do have a comparison, and Mr. Legore can, I think, attest to this, is that I know I started out as the CEO with the Capital, it was called Capital Region Board at the time. It was right from the start. And I was there temporarily until they found a permanent person. And then I spent, parts of the next 2 or 3 or 4 years working for them on special projects. And then I was acting again because the CEO at the time left, and Doug, Mr. Legore, replaced me. But what's interesting is when we started out in Edmonton, or the Capital Region Board, there's 24 municipalities. I believe now they're down to 12 or 13 because there was that many that wanted out of that. They did not want to be there. And in some ways, the larger municipalities really didn't want them there either. But it was sort of a mutual thing. But, why would they have included 24 municipalities off the start? Some as small as 1,000 people. I have no idea. I can't answer that, but it is an interesting comparison.
Thank you. Just before I go to Councillor Montgomery for a motion, I'm just going to throw this out there. Would Council like to see this motion come forward tonight, or do we want to, and I don't like putting things off to other meetings, but should we revisit this once the plan is finalized and sent off to the minister, and then we can explore the avenues of whatever is decided by council? Or do we want to make it known, tonight, knowing that the minister's not going to listen to our requests until after the plan is sent up to Edmonton? What are you folks thinking, councillors? Councillor Peterson?
So if the minister's not going to consider it anyway, it wouldn't hurt to wait then for another 2 weeks until it's finished. And I take Jim's word, but I feel driven to see that report in its entirety before I make a decision. And if it's only 2 weeks and it's not going to make a difference to the minister, there would be nothing gained on the one side and nothing lost on the other. So.
Yeah, and thank you, Councillor Peterson, for that. And just so council knows, in the month of May, we've moved to weekly board meetings. We used to do monthly, but now we've gone to weekly as the pace has increased to try to get this thing across the finish line, approved by the board and then sent up to Minister McIver. Councillor Montgomery, did you have a comment? I know you were thinking of a motion. How do you feel about the concept of postponing this until after the report is, or the plan is done and sent up to Edmonton?
I personally, I mean, like, I can go either way, I guess. I personally don't believe that there's any reason to wait. The growth plan is basically finalized. We've basically seen a final version of the growth plan. I don't think that there's anything, bearing in mind that nothing's going to change with the growth plan over the next couple of weeks. It doesn't, help us to stay in. It is true that we're not going to get a response back. First of all, if we vote to send this letter, it's going to take time for it to, get sent and then, to get received and then to, for the minister to process it and everything else. So by the time the minister is, kind of looking at it, the growth plan will probably be out. And I think, for all the reasons that Mr. Simpson, spelled out in this report and just now, so I'm like, I guess I'll defer to you, Mr. Mayor. What you think.
Sure.
And I can speak to it, I guess, whenever.
Thanks. I'm just wondering too if council feels you know enough about the plan to make your decision, or if you'd like to learn more. Like, to be honest with you, there are many times in my board meetings where I look at the agenda and listen to the discussions, and there's not much for me to say because it doesn't apply to us. And I know, we have to look 30 years plus down the road, but we're quite removed from a lot of the issues. Councillor Corbeil.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was going to say that I don't know enough about the growth plan. I don't know enough about CMRB to be swayed one way or another. I see the recommendations and I agree with the recommendations, but how long have we been in the CMRB? Realistically, waiting a couple weeks, looking at the growth plan isn't going to hurt us much neither. But I would defer to yourself and Councillor Sobel and Councillor Montgomery, and I would actually trust your call because you are members. So that's your committees. I trust you guys.
Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would state much the same. I believe that we've already been looking at this. I think it's been over a year that we've been discussing this potential, and I don't see why we wouldn't wait another couple of weeks if that would make council feel a little bit more comfortable. And so if there's more information to be had, and if that could perhaps influence our decision, I see no reason why not wait. So I'm fine just deferring this for until the middle of June. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Bauer. Councillor Sobel.
So just in regards to timing and the fact that we only have 12 days left to in this month before that report is supposed to be finished, it's interesting to note that at any meeting I've been at, no motion from administration goes through without a whole bunch of amendments. My suggestion is that the board will be looking at amendments between now and May 31st. Administration will be feverishly typing changes in the growth plan. That's just the way it is. So I personally, it's a couple of weeks before the plan's finished. I just as soon wait. I'd like to have a look at it. I still have questions. And I'll be honest with you, I'm very torn on this issue because I appreciate Jim's comments, but I also know that there is some good with this growth plan and with being part of an organization like the CMRB. Whether we realize that in the immediate future or not is unclear, but eventually I believe we will. And sometimes good to be at the table, even if the conversation is not necessarily about you. There is protection being provided by as a member of the CMRB, though. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sobel. Councillor Peterson?
Your Worship, I really appreciate you giving me an extra chance. I just was wondering, is there any possibility that the cons that have been so legitimately outlined by our own experts could be addressed at CMRB? I would ask that question of you and Councillor Sobel and of Mr. Simpson.
I think I think at this stage, if I were to bring up these cons and raise them as questions concerning our involvement, there would be much consternation because there have been other municipalities in the board who have raised some concerns, and the very terse response has been, why didn't you ask these same questions months ago? And I don't think there'd be a lot of entertaining of that at this point. There's a real effort to get this thing done and see if it's going to be approved and what the vote might be and if the thing is going to be sent off to the province. Mr. Simpson.
Yeah, if I could just add to your comments too, and I know Chuck is here, but I think a lot of our concerns have been raised certainly at the administrative committee level, but the consultant that the CMRB has hired has a plan, has a picture of how this whole region should develop. I think your administration doesn't agree with it. We don't think it's the right fit for the town of Strathmore, but I don't know if Mr. Proctor, Mr. Wilson have any comments to make, but I would say that a lot of these issues has been raised and, maybe they didn't agree with us,
So, Councillor Montgomery, I'll come back to you.
Oh, thank you. So I would prefer the council be, as informed as possible. So for that reason, I have no problem with waiting. As Mr. Simpson said, a lot of these issues have been raised and the way this group works, they're not really going to want us to reap the benefits without paying the cost essentially. And the costs, are to bend to whatever rules that they all have to follow essentially. So, if we were looking to get, some sort of special consideration, other municipalities in the group would certainly be looking for special considerations, for their particular peculiarities as well. So it's, having attended, a number of these meetings and, and reading the reports and, seeing the development of the growth plan and everything else, I feel comfortable, with the decision. But again, I think, I would prefer that all of council feel informed and perhaps, we should have another, discussion about this where, some of these questions can be raised. Councillor Peterson, to your point about, it's, and correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like you would like to, you're concerned about the ability for us to do certain things within our community in the future. And I think the best way to do that is actually to be on our own and to have control over our destiny so that we don't have to push things through the regional board to get them pushed back onto us. It's one of those things that we can, make a made in Strathmore solution, if you will. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think everybody's had their chance to speak, so we're not going to put a motion on the floor. Councillor Peterson?
I could just respond to Councillor Montgomery, Your Worship. It's not that at all. I just don't think that in this part of the 21st century, looking forward, that there's a made in Strathmore solution. There's things that are better made in Strathmore, but our water comes through Calgary. Our stormwater management is irrevocably linked. Our whole idea of how we manage greater resources, is irrevocably linked. And, if we could go to some kind of a system where our IDPs were linked, and we didn't have to be in the CMRB to do that, but could still, there would be an understanding that we would have a management plan around those greater resources that impact the future. I would feel much more comfortable. If that's not doable at this point in time, I understand, but it's not something that we should ever consider taking off the table. Thanks, Your Worship.
Thank you. Mr. Legore has a comment.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, you have to deal with this one way or the other. You either have to make a motion to postpone the matter or put a motion on the table to approve it as presented, whatever. You've had considerable debate here without having a motion on the floor even.
Yeah, you're right, and that's on me. We got into a lot of discussion and we didn't actually have a motion on the floor. So, Councillor Montgomery, are you comfortable putting on a motion to look at deferring this till the plan is submitted?
Yeah, and if I could ask administration, because our next meeting is June 2nd, is I guess, so that probably won't be enough time before the growth plan is released. So should it be committee of the whole, or I mean, yeah, I guess, like, bearing in mind that this does cost staff time, and as this kind of moves forward, we do have to pay staff to process not just the growth plan, but process all the development related things that come from all the municipalities around Calgary, and so there is real cost associated with being in the CMRB.
Well, June 16th.
Yeah, I guess I would want to know from administration what their recommendation is as far as postponing, or when it could be postponed to, if it can be.
Sure, and June 16th would be the first regular meeting after the plan was submitted to the minister. Mr. Simpson, anything in June stick out to you? June 2nd, 9th, or 16th?
I guess with the 16th being a regular council meeting and a decision maybe to be made at that meeting, I would recommend June 16th.
Okay, Mr. Legore?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, if this council wants to deal with it, I would suggest you put it on the agenda for June 16th, or you delay it till the next council. Nothing is going to change between now and elections. So if this council wants to deal with it, I would suggest you have it on the agenda for June 16th.
Does that help,
Okay.
Councillor Montgomery, with your motion?
Yeah, absolutely. I will move that we postpone this agenda item until the June 16th council meeting.
Thank you. And now, better late than never, we have a motion to defer this till June 16th. Is there any discussion on that motion to postpone till then? Seeing none, I'll call the motion. All in favor? And that motion is carried. So it'll come back to us from administration on June 16th. Bike gangs in town. 9.8, AUMA Resolution Long-Term Care, which is on page 44. And Mr. Wilson, are you speaking to this? No?
Mr. Mayor, it's actually Councillor Peterson that is going to present this, I believe.
Thank you. Councillor Peterson?
Thank you, Your Worship. So what is before council tonight is a proposed resolution that came from the Seniors Advisory regarding their concerns around long-term care. It's been long discussed at the Seniors Advisory Committee, and it does relate to issues relevant to what we've seen through the COVID pandemic and the impacts of that on long-term care. And I don't think that there's any need for me. I'm assuming that all of council has read this. And one of the things that is incomplete in this report is the background context. We're still waiting for some information from Asha and some others, but we do have to get this. I believe Deborah Hammerluck could attest to this, but it is the end of June that this has to be submitted.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Yes, you are correct.
And so the background notes are just relevant to the whereas is in the recommendation. So we are talking about the therefore be resolved that the AUMA Association urge our provincial government to petition the Government of Canada to make long-term care and home care medically necessary services under the Canada Health Act. We believe that that this will be also very, very much in the purview of many other councils across the province. And so we do think that that, you know, we're not sure whether this would be the one that would go forward or not, but this is what they're looking at.
Thank you. Deborah, if I could ask you a procedural question. Do you need the entire thing read as far as us approving it? Yes, we do. So Councillor Peterson, did you want to make this motion reading the entire resolution?
The council approved the following resolution to be submitted to AUMA for consideration. Whereas hospital and physicians care are covered by Medicare, long-term care and home care are not. There's an error there. There are long wait lists for subsidized care and inequity in our system where those who can pay more get better access. And whereas costs borne by both the province and the families of Alberta in caring for aging parents continue to increase and are unsustainable in the long term, and whereas the aging demographic and chronic lack of adequate housing and care solutions for seniors demands innovative solutions and the development of creative alternatives, and whereas many families, if given an opportunity, would like to provide direct in-home care for their aged parents, but need options for maintaining income levels and or standard of living, it is therefore resolved that the Alberta Urban Municipalities Association urge our provincial government to petition the Government of Canada to make long-term care and home care medically necessary services under the terms of the Canada Health Act.
Thank you for that motion. And you've heard the motion. Is there discussion on this? Councillor Sobel and Councillor Montgomery?
Thank you, Your Worship. It's more of a question. I'm wondering if Councillor Peterson is also contemplating going to FCM with this.
I haven't contemplated that, Your Worship. I would leave that in the purview of the mayor or of councillors who are planning on going to FCM. I think it would probably get support with certainly with other groups. I don't know, Your Worship.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And that's something we can definitely discuss as we move forward. Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you, Worship. I just have some questions for clarification, I guess. So one is by making it medically necessary, that I presume that means that the federal government will provide, you know, the money for that care?
The potential would be that it would come under the Canada Health Act. But it saying that it's medically necessary gives it a lot of leeway. But I think the desires of most, what I've seen in most provinces, what we've seen is that that they are advocating for it to come under the Canada Health Act.
Okay. Okay, and like, you know, it sounds like a good idea. I'm just wondering, like, you know, given that the provincial government is strained, and the, you know, and I always think about how there's one taxpayer, right? And you know, we can, you know, petition the provincial government for more money or petition the federal government for more money, but I'm just, so is it just basically like, and you know, pardon me, I guess I'm not totally familiar with the funding model for, I believe it's income taxes that pay for the federal government takes income taxes and then gives them to the province to administer. Okay. 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 Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery and Councillor Peterson. So we have a motion on the.
Might add, I will make sure that and if council wants to wait until June 2nd, I'm prepared. I should have the background notes. I was really hoping to have them tonight. So I would be also prepared to if council is uneasy about this, I can make sure that the background notes are in for June 2nd. if that is the wish of council, if they would like to wait. The background notes will not change the recommendation nor the resolution. It will not change. But if council is more comfortable having the information come forward, it will be things that will talk to demographic, mainly to demographics and to COVID crisis and what it's done to seniors across the country, what it's done to seniors in our province, that 80% of the losses have been through seniors, and it'll speak to choice in care as well, where people have choice in care. That will, the background notes will relate to those kinds of things. But if it's council's wish, I'm prepared to leave this to June 2nd as well.
Is there the will of council to defer this, or to just carry on and deal with it as a motion that's presented now? Councillor Montgomery?
Yeah, I'm happy to go along. I support the idea of providing care to these people that need it. I'm certainly interested, though, to learn more about some of the background. So, however council would like to handle it.
So I don't know how we deal with this. Would you like to just have this brought back?
I will withdraw my motion. Okay. I'll make a motion to postpone this, or to add this item to the June 2nd agenda.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion to postpone this agenda item till June 2nd. Any discussion on that new motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? And this will opposed? Okay, so we have it passed, and it'll be coming back to us on June 2nd. That brings us to 10 committee reports. I believe we got one email to us today regarding Councillor Corbeil's committee of WDEMSA. Any other reports from councillors tonight? Councillor Montgomery?
Thank you. So I attended a library board meeting last night, and I can just provide a bit of information. So in the month of April, there was, so obviously the library was shut down for most of that. There was 776 curbside pickups. And a number of those, as I mentioned before, a number of those were processed through an app called TrackPack. That's TRACPAC. And so that's an app that people can use to access and order books, and then to arrange for curbside pickup. And apparently usage of the app wasn't, really high, but so I would encourage people to make use of that app. There's apparently still exams being proctored at the library, including some citizenship exams, actually. And so if people if they were or need to have an exam proctored, then the library is still available for that. The library will be starting their, what's it called again? They have two programs. So basically they operate in the park, and one is for kind of, medium-aged kids, let's say. And I can't remember the name of that one, but it goes on normally anyways. But then there's another one actually called Ice Cream in the Park. And that's for 3 to 5 year olds. And so that is basically just, where they have some reading going on and some other fun stuff. And then apparently at the end, there's ice cream or popsicles. So if you have somebody in the 3 to 5 year old age range, I encourage you to go to the library website or on their Facebook page for more information about that. And and that's it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. Any other reports? Thank you. Then I guess we need a motion to accept Councillor Corbeil.
I move the council accept the committee reports for information.
Thank you for that motion. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? Motion is carried. We go on to 11 items directly related to council. 11.1, notice of motion addressing racism and discrimination in sports facilities. Councillor Sobel. And I believe this is just a notice of motion that is telling us it's coming to us at the June 2nd regular council meeting, so we can move on. You've all seen that. Item 12, bylaws. 12.1, 21-07, off-site levy bylaw. And Ethan, welcome. I almost got you up on the wrong item before.
Thank you. Good evening, Your Worship and Council. I'm here tonight with an adjusted offsite levy bylaw in the hopes of getting second and third reading. All of these changes can be seen on page 62 of your agenda. So implementation of the new levy rates will be phased in until January of 2022. The previous 5 months of consultation that we've had on this bylaw, as well as an additional 6 weeks following tonight's meeting, is an opportunity for developers to pay at our existing rates. We have had some developers come in the previous couple months and pay. So they've taken advantage of that already. Effective July 1st, 2021, rates will increase implementary and stay in effect until the next increase on January 1st, 2022, when the full proposed rates will be implemented. This phased approach was provided following comments received at the last regular meeting of council. No further adjustments were made from the previous versions which were shared with council. This is the only adjustment that has been made. And from here, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ethan. Questions, Councillor Montgomery?
Just a motion whenever you're ready.
I'm ready now.
Okay. I will move the council give second reading to bylaw number 21-07, offsite levy bylaw. And if I could just say thank you to administration, Mr. Simpson and Ethan and anybody else, perhaps Mr. Proctor, who worked on this. I really appreciate all the thought and work that went into this. I appreciate the level of detail that we were able to examine this at. And I appreciate also that you guys came up with a solution to help mitigate some of the other problems that are being experienced in the housing industry right now. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. We have a motion for second reading now. So is there further discussion on this motion for second reading? Seeing none, I'll call the motion. All in favor? And the motion is carried. Councillor Corbeil?
I move the council give third reading to bylaw 21-07 offsite levy bylaw.
Thank you. All in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you, Ethan. We have no urgent business. And now we come to 14. Any questions between councillors and or council statements? Seeing none. Administrative inquiries, I believe we have those starting on page 159. And I believe they are the answers to your questions. And Deborah, we don't need to go through this because they've got the answers that they've requested. So that would take care of 15.1, 15.2.
Your worship, sorry, if I could ask a question.
Yes.
Thank you. And I know this was taken off the agenda. I was hoping I could get find out why that one particular response was taken off the agenda, just with regards to the bulletin board.
Jim.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Montgomery. The reason we pulled it off, so our recommendation, as you can see, we wanted to put the bulletin board on the vault building, the old shoebox, I think you called it, shoebox building. And administration-wise, we felt it was the best place to locate this. We had contacted the vault, I guess, tenants, the ones that are setting up shop inside that building, and we asked them, really kind of asked them if they would have any objections to it and if they would consider maybe monitoring the board. And we felt that it's downtown. We felt it would bring a lot more people even to their facility, to their building. However, we got a response I received a response, I guess it came in yesterday to Mr. Pretzlaff. I got the response this morning, and they said they didn't support it being put on their building or put on the west side of the building, whether it was, we don't even have to attach it. It can be freestanding. We could set that up. But I guess we just felt that without having the opportunity maybe to have a further discussion with them, we certainly would have liked them to support the idea, but they didn't support the idea. They had a meeting of the people involved in the vault and chose, they advised that they didn't support it. That means we either accept the fact it shouldn't go there, try to find another location, or we try to talk to them and see if we can convince them to support the concept of putting it there. And that was the reason we withdrew it today at last minute.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much for that. And thanks for your work on this.
Thanks. I just have a general question for you, Jim. Are there a lot of municipalities that use these community bulletin boards? Because it seems like, you know, I think they were probably good in their day, but there's so many people on social media now, and I have seen in the past that community bulletin board down here got pretty ratty looking as well.
Yeah, it does. You have to look after them. I think there's a certain clientele that still uses them. I know where I live, they have 5 of them in the town, and they're very well used. You know, I don't know what to say. All I know is, and from what I heard is, in the past, they weren't looked after. They were, like, as you said, kind of ratty. We wanted to spruce it up, make it look better, do kind of a new one, and make sure we monitored it on a regular basis, meaning every day or every second day, somebody would stop by and make sure that, you know, take a stamp and make sure that nothing has been there for more than a month. I don't know. We certainly would take any direction from council if you had some.
Okay, thank you. So this will be coming back to us then at another time?
Yeah, we'll bring it back at a future council meeting. I think it would give us the opportunity maybe to have a sit-down discussion with the tenants in the vault building and see if we can convince them to support it, because we do think that that's the best location.
Okay, thank you. So I think that concludes all our business for tonight. I'd be looking for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Bauer has a motion to adjourn at 9:03. All in favor?